Quake is coming back in the form of Quake Champions, a game we've been promised isn't a MOBA, but don't know all that much about otherwise.
Good news, right? Quake fans around the world rejoice! Sure, we're all old now and our wrists don't work as good as they did in the mid-90s, but with all these team-based, class-based, slot machine shooters floating around, it's nice to have some straight-up, no-nonsense arena combat to look forward to. I mean, that is if Quake Champions is an arena combat game, because the thing about the Quake series is that its most defining characteristic is how different each game in the series is. It's gone from Gothic Viking to future military, from multiplayer focus to single-player campaign. So come with me, if you will, on a journey through the bargain basket of Steam, a journey through 2 decades of slipgates in the first-person shooter genre.
This is the history of Quake.
Texas's id Software spent the early 90s defining the rules of the first-person shooter genre. 1992's Wolfenstein 3D wasn't the first ever FPS, but it was certainly the progenitor of what we now recognize as the genre today. They followed it with perhaps the most fondly regarded series in the genre, the timeless Doom and Doom 2. So in 3 short years, 3 of the most impactful FPS games of all time came out of a single studio. So it's fair to say, with a lot of eyes on whatever id was getting up to next. In the years preceding Doom, online chat rooms and message boards were bustling with rumours and speculation around id's next game. What was their next project? What was it called? What did it look like? And what genre was it? The origins of Quake actually go back further than that, to id's oft-forgotten 2D platformer, Commander Keen, a series of games where you controlled a child on a pogo stick whose favourite hobby was to murder alien wildlife and collect their tears. Man, what's up with these trees? They look like they're having a real good time. A promotion for the Keen trilogy made reference to a follow-up game called Quake, The Fight for Justice, in which you control a character known as Quake, taken from a D&D game run by id's lead programmer and co-founder John Carmack. This character was said to be the strongest person in the world, capable of trans-dimensional travel and wielding a weapon known as the Hammer of Thunderbolts. But this wasn't planned as a shooter. It was meant to be a 3D role-playing game with complex non-binary decisions and a realistic immersive world. After some prototyping in 1992, id realized the technology to realize their vision wasn't really available yet, and so the project was shelved. After they finished Doom 2, the 9-person team, including John and Adrian Carmack, John Romero, Kevin Cloud, and American McGee, began working on a 3D game engine. The game that would eventually help id to show off this engine to the world took on many shapes and forms during this time. At one stage it was a Gothic Norse RPG. At another time it was said to have a VR tie-in with a major headset manufacturer. At another it was a local multiplayer game with microphones using locational audio, so you'd have to whisper or else the monsters would hear you. Hey lady, be careful. There's a scrag behind you. Watch out, I'm gonna get you. But by the time this engine was finished, the team had been desperately working on the technology for months on end. So instead of trying to reinvent the genre again, they took what they had created and married it with what they knew. Instead of the fantasy first-person action game they had envisaged, Quake got Doom-style guns, while a collaboration with 9 Inch Nails frontman Trent Reznor helped pull together some of the disparate design ideas that the team had accumulated during development. As such, the Quake that was released in 1996 via Q-Test to websites around the world is a bizarre and unique-looking game. A dark, medieval-style world filled with unfamiliar technology and grotesque creatures, and it all works surprisingly well. But then again, I never wondered why I was fighting knights, soldiers, and Lovecraftian ogres all at the same time. I never noticed how slipgates made all the different worlds feel less disjointed. Perhaps this was because I was so taken aback by how different the game played. Unlike Doom, it was an FPS built with a mouse in mind. Mouse look enabled the level designers to use increased verticality, while the game didn't ignore height and depth like first-person shooters before it. You had weapons with arcs, and there was increased mobility in secrets and puzzles. The game also featured a wonderful multiplayer component which proved popular across college networks and online shooter early adopters who learned how to shoot rockets with lag, kinda like World War I snipers. It was also the first shooter to get widespread mod support as we see it today, with Quake World Team Fortress and Action Quake supporting large communities for years after. This gave the game longevity past the length of its campaign, but Quake fans would not have to wait long for a full bona fide sequel.
Farewell speech as these brave soldiers took the fight to the Strobe's home planet. We, the rest of humanity, wish them luck and Godspeed as well.
Quake 2 is an entirely different beast to its predecessor, and the reason behind that is that this wasn't actually meant to be a sequel for Quake. The project, known as Strog and Lock and Load in its early days, was a way for id to design a cohesive game coming off the happy accidental mess of the first Quake. By this stage, John Romero had left the company, which meant there was less internal interest in keeping the Lovecraftian theme. Instead, 1997's Quake 2 was set on a fictional futuristic Earth, and had you playing as a Marine named Bitterman fighting off the invading Strog forces. Theme aside, the game was relatively similar to the first Quake in that you fought off hordes of varying enemies, often in large open arenas. A number of weapons from the first game also made the transition. The shotgun, super shotgun, grenade launcher and rocket launcher were all here, albeit with a bit of a makeover. And a personal favourite, the grenades, which had the best sound design and animation I have ever seen in a first-person shooter. This Quake 2 engine proved popular with other developers and went on to power such PC gaming classics as Sin, Anachronox, Soldier of Fortune, Kingpin Life of Crime, Half-Life, and John Romero's Daikatana.
But the most enduring part of Quake 2 for players was its fantastic multiplayer.
Quake 2 multiplayer was the fastest gameplay online shooter fans had ever seen. A masterful balance of frenetic movement, cool weaponry, and maps that acted as playgrounds for you to sprint through guns blazing. While mods such as Rocket Arena, Action Quake 2, and Rail Wars made it the most popular online shooter for years. In fact, Quake remained on challenge as the arena shooter du jour for quite a while. But as broadband penetration increased, more and more people were playing more and more games online, while at the same time the once spacious first-person genre was becoming increasingly crowded. For many Quake fans, multiplayer had always been the hook. At the very least, it was the part of the game that kept people coming back. So in light of the changing face of the genre, and in an attempt to firmly stamp themselves as the kings of arena combat, it decided to make their third Quake game a multiplayer-only affair.
You have taken the lead. Excellent. You are tied for the lead. Impressive. Excellent drag. Prepare your team. Welcome to Quake 3 Arena.
Quake 3 Arena, released in 1999, the same week as Unreal Tournament, was a blissfully fast arena shooter, featuring powerful weaponry, wonderful movement, and a variety of well-designed maps. As far as I'm concerned, this is still one of the best online shooters ever made, full of timeless maps and modes, from railgun battles on the longest yard, to rocket duels on the campgrounds, or waiting for the quad damage to spawn in the Temple of Retribution. You could also choose your own skin from a range of characters who have definitely lasted the test of time. There was Meth Biker, Creepy Neighbor, Blanca, Eyeball, Mohawk Dude on a hoverboard, a selection of aliens made of triangles, and John Carmack. It also looked absolutely amazing for the day, which is just as well because I, like many others, had to fork out €150 on a brand new OpenGL graphics card just to get the game to work. I mean, look at that blood. Look at the bubbles. Look at the blood and the bubbles. And though Quake 1 and 2 were supplemented with popular map packs, Quake 3 got its very own paid expansion in Quake 3 Team Arena, an answer to the increasingly popular team-based modes in games like Counter-Strike and Unreal Tournament. And though Quake has been traditionally a PC game, even Dreamcast players were able to get in on the act, at least until a user-created patch that helped mouse and keyboard using PC players break into Dreamcast servers turned the console crowd into lambs for the slaughter. Quake 3 marked 3 for 3 for the Quake franchise. Each game did something new and interesting, and each had its own unique style. All these games are still so well regarded that if you ask 3 Quake fans which is their favourite, you could very easily get 3 different answers. The consistency of quality coming out of it across the 90s created one of the most enduring eras in PC gaming, and Quake, as much as Doom and Wolfenstein, is to be credited with this. So, let's talk about Quake 4.
Alright, you maggots, haul ass or die!
Quake 4 isn't a bad game, but it does fall short of the high watermark set by its timeless predecessors. Developed by Raven Software while id was focusing on a Doom sequel, the game was also built upon id Tech 4, and so looks a little bit like a reskin of Doom 3. It also played like it too, with a much more linear, event-focused map design than its predecessors, and a hands-on approach to storytelling which felt a little bit out of place in a series that never really took its lore all that seriously. The one true sequel in this franchise, Quake 4 carries on directly from the events of Quake 2, with human marines invading the enemy's home planet of Strogos, or Strogos, frankly I don't give a shit. But perhaps the biggest fault of Quake 4 was the fact that the marketing for the game telegraphed the big reveal in the story, that upon being captured, your character is converted Locutus of Borg style into a Strog. This Strogification scene is perhaps the most memorable part of a game that attempted to emulate the success of titles like Half-Life 2, Halo 2 and Doom 3, which had come out the year prior. Quake 4 also had a multiplayer with a spread of modes including Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, CTF and Dead Zone, but the multiplayer in Quake 4 felt more like a requirement of a game released in 2005 than something that Raven had put actual passion into. And then we get on to the last Quake game. Splash Damage, the mod team turned game design studio behind such games as Quake 3 Fortress and Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, helped id craft the multiplayer for Doom 3. Their next project saw them craft an Enemy Territory style game in the Quake universe. Enemy Territory Quake Wars took place before Quake 2 and was a class-based, objective-focused game with infantry, vehicles and air units. I remember enjoying my time at Quake Wars and generally have a lot of time for the Enemy Territory template. The asymmetrical teams force you to think tactically, while the objective-based nature of the battles focuses firefights in a way that the Battlefield series has often lacked. It was well received by fans of that style of game, but felt more like an in-universe spin-off than a bona fide Quake game. And that's sort of how I feel Quake Champions might pan out. This first new Quake in 9 years looks like it's going to be played in teams, using hero characters with unique abilities. And as popular as Overwatch is, I do think there's room for an arena team deathmatch game in this space. This is a tough one for id. Sticking to your roots is a difficult balancing act. Ignore the past completely, and you risk alienating fans. Do it too much, and you end up with something like the Unreal Tournament Alpha. Everything I would have wanted on paper, but nothing to get really excited about. It's certainly promising that perhaps the best sequel to a classic game in recent memory has come out of this studio. But if there's anything we can learn from looking back at this storied history of the Quake franchise, it's how each game in this series was different to the last. The connective tissue that links these classics together is the frenetic, high-scale action that we've come to know and love. So I'm not too worried about Quake deviating from the template all that much. For me at least, if Quake Champions feels like a Quake game, that'll be enough for me.
Thanks for watching GameSpot's History of Quake. If you enjoyed this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we've got a bunch more of these coming over the next couple of weeks. And if you've got your own story to tell about Quake, please hit me up on Twitter or leave your thoughts in the comment box below.